All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're exploring the fascinating core philosophy of documentary filmmaking, and we're going to do it by comparing two radically different perspectives. We're going to look at how the very concept of truth in cinema has been debated, redefined, and captured over the last century. It's an incredible journey. We'll be traveling from the radical, machine-obsessed streets of post-revolutionary Russia all the way to the deeply empathetic, human-centered cutting rooms of modern independent cinema. Let's get started.
So what makes a documentary true? It's a deceptively simple question, right? I mean, we naturally assume documentaries are just objective reality caught on tape. We expect cold, hard facts. But as the source material reveals, the truth is actually a whole lot more complex than that. You see, a documentary isn't just a security camera recording real time, it's a carefully constructed narrative. And how a filmmaker chooses to capture that reality, well, that fundamentally changes the truth we end up seeing on screen. To really wrap our heads around this, we need to look at two pioneers who approach this question from completely opposite ends of the spectrum.
Section 1. Vertov and the Cine Eye, the mechanical vision.
To understand this first perspective, let's travel back to the 1920s to meet Dziga Vertov. He was a Soviet filmmaker with a revolutionary, almost sci-fi vision for cinema. Looking at his rapid evolution is just wild. Back in 1918, right after the Bolshevik Revolution, a 22-year-old Vertov started editing a newsreel series called Kino Nedelya. He actually ran a film car on an Agit train, traveling straight to the battlefronts, equipped to shoot, edit, and project films right there on the spot. But by 1922, he launched Kino Pravda, and this is where he really began to push the boundaries, eventually leading to his globally celebrated 1929 film, Man with a Movie Camera. Vertov was completely dissatisfied with traditional narratives. He didn't just want to tell a story. He wanted to reinvent human perception itself.
To pull this off, Vertov and his collective, known as the Kinox, developed two core concepts. First was Kino Pravda, which literally translates to film truth, and the second was Kino Glaz, or the Cine Eye. Vertov essentially believed that the human eye was a flawed, bumbling instrument. He thought that by taking fragments of actuality, real raw clips of everyday life, and organizing them together through editing, he could reveal a much deeper truth, a truth that the naked human eye simply could not process on its own. He saw the camera not just as a handy recording device, but as a literal evolutionary tool.
He had absolute faith in the mechanical perfection of the machine over flawed humanity. I mean, he literally wrote, "I am the mechanical eye. I emancipate myself henceforth and forever from human immobility." Basically, he trusted a crank-operated box of gears way more than he trusted his own two eyes. He wanted to make man as precise as a stopwatch. For Vertov, the path to truth wasn't found through human emotion. It was found through the cold, calculated, and totally unerring ways of electricity and the mechanical lens.
Which brings us to Section 2, Life Caught Unawares, Unfiltered Reality. Because of this deep devotion to mechanical truth, Vertov aggressively rejected theatrical drama. He viewed psychological fiction as an absolute absurdity, even calling it an opiate of the masses. Instead, his guiding credo was capturing life caught unawares. He went out and filmed marketplaces, bars, everyday labor, sometimes even using hidden cameras without asking for permission, just to dissect the honest truth of human perception. He avoided stage reenactments at all costs. But interestingly, as our sources point out, life caught unawares didn't just mean filming people who didn't know the camera was there. It also meant capturing the genuine, unfiltered reaction of life when it was surprised or even provoked by the sudden presence of the camera. The ultimate goal was always the unvarnished, objective truth of the moment, totally stripped of the romanticism of literature or theater.
Section 3. A modern doc manifesto, focusing on Yanis Cole's approach. Because you have to ask, is the mechanical lens really the only way to find truth? Let's jump to the modern era and see how a deeply humanistic approach completely flips the script.
Here is the crucial philosophical clash. It's the cold, objective perfection of the machine versus the subjective, ethical passion of the human filmmaker. Where Vertov wanted to evolve beyond human immobility, veteran filmmaker Yanis Cole places humanity at the absolute center of her work. She focuses heavily on marginalized people, those living on the fringes of society. And she argues that the very best way to capture their truth isn't by hiding a camera in a bush and catching them unawares. No, it's by building a profound, subjective connection with them. Cole lays this all out in a fascinating modern manifesto. She argues that a documentary has to start with a real passion to tell a story. In fact, she famously takes months or even years just to get to know her subjects before she ever lets a camera roll. For instance, she spent 4 full years gaining access to a women's prison just so she could genuinely meet and understand the participants prior to filming. Think about that commitment. She insists on seeing her subjects in all their humanity rather than defining them purely by their immediate circumstances. It's a methodology deeply rooted in empathy and exhaustive research, rather than just detached mechanical observation.
And in practice, Cole completely rejected the staggering 100-to-1 shooting ratio of traditional observational filmmaking. Instead of just turning the camera on and waiting endlessly and, let's face it, expensively, for life to just happen in front of it, Cole opted for a highly focused, research-driven shooting plan. She gets out there, learns the realities in the field, adapts her plan dynamically, and makes sure she is doing what's best for both her story and her participants, rather than just acting as a passive fly on the wall.
Section 4. Ethics and Humanity, and a Filmmaker's Duty. When a filmmaker is this deeply involved with their subjects, profound ethical responsibilities become incredibly critical. Cole emphasizes that documentaries naturally carry a subliminal message of truth to the audience. Because we, as viewers, naturally trust the documentary format, filmmakers carry a massive ethical burden. They have to negotiate terms fairly, make a mutual commitment to their subjects, and above all, never trick their audience. Cole notes something really poignant here. Even when you are documenting controversial or overtly corrupt figures, the filmmaker owes it to the craft to capture their story accurately and respectfully without resorting to unethical manipulation.
This level of ethical transparency is especially crucial today, with the rise of hybrid films, docudramas, and mockumentaries. We're talking about films like Radiant City or The Blair Witch Project that blend fiction and nonfiction to engage audiences who are heavily invested in the concept of truth. Now, Cole actually fully supports these hybrid genres. She even wrote a docudrama herself. But she has one strict caveat. The blend must be clearly identified. As long as the truth of the format is eventually revealed to the audience, the ethical contract remains intact. The danger only pops up when fiction is permanently passed off as fact.
Section 5. Interpreting Reality, Finding Common Ground.
So we have Vertov, the ultimate champion of the objective machine, and Cole, the champion of human subjectivity. But here is the real kicker. Despite their wildly different eras and approaches, Vertov and Cole actually share a surprising amount of common ground. When you look closely, they share a distinct blueprint for cinematic truth. First off, both fiercely reject that old-school voice of God explanatory narration. Vertov wanted to separate film from literature, and Cole believes that narration just explaining the obvious totally ruins a film. Second, both filmmakers ultimately agree that a documentary isn't just a pile of raw footage. The true story is forged through deliberate choices made in the editing room. Vertov organized his fragments to create Kino Pravda, and Cole states plainly, the story is found in the cutting room. And finally, both believe a true documentary absolutely must express a distinct, strong point of view.
This shared blueprint leads us perfectly to the ultimate definition coined by the father of documentary himself, John Grierson. He called documentary the creative interpretation of reality. It's brilliant because this single phrase perfectly bridges our two filmmakers. Vertov provides the reality, that raw mechanical actuality, captured perfectly by the lens. But Cole provides the creative interpretation, the human empathy, the exhaustive research, and the precise editing choices that shape those images into a truly meaningful story. It just goes to show that a true documentary requires both the unyielding reality of the machine and the subjective creativity of the human mind.
So, I'll leave you with this question. Next time you sit down to watch a documentary, will you see the objective machine or the subjective storyteller? Keep this in mind because understanding exactly how these films are crafted empowers you to watch your next doc with a truly critical and analytical eye. Are you being presented with life caught unawares or a deeply researched human narrative? The truth, as we've explored today, is always a delicate, powerful dance between the two. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning the lens through which you see the world.